In this episode, we are looking at printers and multifunction devices because these are still common in homes, schools, clinics, warehouses, offices, and many other places where support technicians work. A printer may seem simple to a beginner because it only needs to put words or images on paper, but real support problems often begin during setup, not after months of use. A device can be connected the wrong way, given the wrong driver, placed on the wrong network setting, or left with poor defaults that cause trouble for every user who touches it. When you understand the basics of printer deployment, driver choice, connection methods, and setup settings, it becomes much easier to install a device the right way the first time and much easier to support it later when users start saying it will not print, will not scan, or is behaving differently from what they expected. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.News in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A printer does one main job, but a multifunction device, MFD, combines several jobs into one machine. An MFD may print, scan, copy, and sometimes fax, which means it can solve more than one business need while also creating more than one support problem if it is set up badly. A beginner should think of a basic printer as a simpler device with fewer features and think of an MFD as a shared office tool that depends more heavily on correct settings, correct software, and correct network access. That difference matters because a print-only device might only need to accept a print job and send paper out, while an MFD may need to scan to a computer, scan to email, or save a file to a shared folder, and each of those tasks adds another layer that the technician has to understand before the device can really be called ready for use. Before a technician worries about drivers or network settings, the first job is always the physical setup. The printer has to be placed somewhere sensible, connected to power, loaded with the right paper, and fitted with the correct consumables such as toner or ink before any software work begins. Some beginner problems happen because the device is never prepared properly in the first place, which can mean protective packaging was left inside, the paper guides were not adjusted, or the wrong tray setup was used for the kind of paper the user expects to print on. A technician also pays attention to the location of the device, because a printer in a poor location may be hard to reach, hard to refill, hard to connect, or more likely to overheat, collect dust, or lose connection to the people who need it. And those are all avoidable problems that begin with deployment choices rather than with printer failure. Once the device is physically ready, the next important idea is the driver. A driver is the software that helps the computer communicate with the printer or MFD in a way both sides understand. Without the right driver, the computer may see the device in only a limited way, may miss important features, or may fail to print and scan correctly even though the hardware itself is working. Beginners sometimes think a printer either works or does not work, but technicians know there is a big difference between a device that is merely detected and a device that is fully supported, because printing may be possible while paper size settings, tray choices, scan options, duplex support, or image quality features may be missing until the right driver is installed. Driver type matters because not every driver gives the same level of support. A manufacturer driver is usually built for a specific device or device family and often gives the technician the best access to special features, better print control, and better scan support on an MFD. A universal driver can be useful when an organization supports many printers from one brand and wants a simpler deployment method, but it may not expose every feature in the same way as the full driver for one exact model. A generic driver can sometimes get basic printing working, especially when the goal is just to test whether the device responds, but it often leaves out advanced options, better performance, and some scanning functions, so technicians choose driver types carefully because the wrong choice may not stop printing completely, but can still create support problems by leaving users without the features they need. A local printer connection means the device is attached directly to one computer rather than shared across many systems over a network. The most common example is a printer connected with Universal Serial Bus, USB, which is often simple to understand and easy for a beginner to picture because one cable runs from the computer to the printer. Local printers can be useful in small spaces or for users who do not need to share the device with others. But this setup also means the attached computer becomes a big part of the printing path. And if that computer is turned off, misconfigured, or having problems, printing may stop even though the printer itself is fine. A technician keeps that in mind because local connections can be straightforward during installation, but can also create support limits later, especially when users assume the printer should be available to everyone even though it was deployed as a single computer device from the beginning. A network printer works differently because it connects to the network and becomes a device that more than one user can reach. This setup is common in schools, businesses, and shared work areas because it allows many people to print to the same machine without plugging directly into it. In most cases, the technician will connect the device through a wired network port or a wireless connection, make sure it joins the correct network, and verify that it receives an Internet Protocol (IP) address so other systems can find it. For beginners, the important point is that a network printer depends on more than the printer and the computer because now the network itself becomes part of the picture, which means the printer can fail to print because of cabling, wireless problems, wrong addressing, or incorrect setup on the user's side, even when nothing inside the printer is actually broken. Wireless setup adds convenience, but it also adds more chances for confusion if the technician is not careful. A printer that joins the wrong wireless network, uses an unstable signal, or is placed too far from the access point may seem to work during setup and then fail later in normal use. Users often describe these failures in simple language by saying the printer keeps disappearing, takes too long, or only works sometimes, and that is why technicians prefer clear, stable connections whenever possible. In some environments, a wired network connection is a better support choice because it reduces wireless interference and creates a more predictable path to the device. While in other environments, a wireless setup makes sense because cabling is difficult or the device must sit in a location where wiring is not practical, so the best deployment choice depends on stability, user needs, and how easy the device will be to support after installation day. Basic printer configuration is not just about making the device appear in the operating system. A technician also checks settings that shape how the printer behaves during daily use, such as default paper size, tray selection, print quality, color or black and white output, and whether double-sided printing is available and enabled. If these defaults are wrong, users may waste paper, print jobs may fail, documents may come out in the wrong format, or the support desk may keep getting the same complaint from different people who all assume the printer is broken. Naming also matters more than beginners expect, because a device with a clear name is easier for users to find and easier for technicians to support, while a vague or confusing name makes it harder to tell which printer is being used, especially in larger environments where many similar devices exist. Scanning adds another layer because an MFD may be able to print correctly while scanning still fails or works only in a limited way. A user might want to scan to a computer, send a document through email, or save a file to a shared folder, and each of those choices depends on proper setup, correct software support, and sometimes access to network locations or email services. A beginner should understand that scanning is not just a button on the front of the machine, because behind that button is a workflow that tells the device where the file should go, what format to use, and whether the user has a path that actually works. This is why technicians test both printing and scanning when they deploy an MFD, because a device is not fully ready just because one feature works, and many user complaints begin when the printer side is fine, but the scanning side was never configured all the way. The choice between local and network deployment changes the kind of support the technician will provide later. A local printer may be easier to set up for one person, but it can become awkward if other people later need access or if the main computer is replaced and the printer has to be rebuilt around a different machine. A network printer can serve many users more easily, but it also depends on a healthy network path, clear naming, correct drivers on multiple computers, and sometimes extra planning for scanning destinations and device discovery. That means deployment is never just about what works in the moment, because technicians also think about who will use the device, how many people need it, how often support calls are likely to happen, and whether the chosen setup makes future support easier or harder. Many common printer problems are really setup mistakes that become visible only after users begin working. If the wrong driver is installed, Printing may be slow, strange characters may appear, trays may not behave correctly, or skin features may be missing. If the wrong port or network path is chosen, the computer may keep sending jobs into the wrong place or may think the printer is offline even though the device itself is turned on and ready. If the defaults are poor, users may get color output when they wanted black and white, single-sided pages when they expected double-sided pages, or paper mismatches that cause frustration every day. And these problems teach an important lesson for beginners because they show that support quality depends heavily on careful deployment, not just on replacing failed hardware. A technician also needs to think about the user experience, especially in beginner environments where users may not know the name of the device, the type of connection, or the difference between print and scan software. When a user says the printer is broken, the real meaning may be that the wrong printer was selected, the scan destination is unclear, the print queue is stuck, the device is on a different network, or the system has only a limited driver installed. That is why a good deployment includes simple, predictable choices that reduce confusion, such as clear printer names, sensible defaults, reliable connection methods, and a quick test of the exact jobs users are likely to perform. In support work, the best setup is often not the one with the most advanced options turned on, but the one that gives users the most stable and understandable experience day after day. There is also a bigger lesson here about why printer setup matters so much in real support work. Printers and MFD units often sit at the point where digital work becomes physical, which means users notice mistakes immediately because they can see a failed page, a missing scan, or a wrong paper result in front of them. A computer issue can sometimes stay hidden in the background for a while, but printer issues interrupt the moment of use very directly, and that makes users feel the problem faster and complain sooner. Because of that, technicians who deploy printers well save themselves a great deal of repeated support effort later, since a clean installation with the right driver, the right connection method, and the right defaults prevents many of the everyday problems that users would otherwise report as device failures. By the end of this topic, printers and multifunction devices should feel less like simple office equipment and more like systems that depend on good choices during setup. The driver affects what features the computer can use, the connection method affects who can reach the device and how stable that access will be, and the basic settings affect whether printing and scanning work the way users expect. A printer that is installed carelessly can still look fine at first, and then create a steady stream of small support problems that waste time for both the user and the technician. When technicians deploy these devices the right way, they are not just making paper come out of a machine, they are creating a reliable service that helps people print, scan, and work with less confusion and with far fewer avoidable support calls.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.